he admitted on tape that he had the classified Afghanistan documents. He found them in the basement. So would it be fair to say that your criticisms of Trump are less about his policies, because I think they would fit in that group somewhere, and more about his personal actions and his personal character?
Somewhat. It depends on whether or not you consider, like, I don't want to get distracted for the next 2 hours or whatever with January 6th, but it's whether or not you believe that he was earnest in his belief that the election was stolen. I think that there's evidence, or it could be circumstantial evidence, but I think there's circumstantial evidence to the fact that he kind of knew that he lost. He wasn't getting the progress that he needed in the investigation of voter fraud to contest the election in a court, and as a result, he decided to do what he did. So that's kind of where it's a non-starter for me.
It's ridiculous to suggest that Trump does not believe that he fucking lost the election. Of course he fucking did. Okay, of course he believes that. Of course, otherwise he wouldn't be.
He believes he lost it, or he believes he didn't lose it.
Take him seriously, not literally, Connor. He's saying Trump definitely knows that he lost the election.
No. He absolutely believes that the election was stolen from him. Is what I meant to say. I'm sorry. I might have misspoke.
Okay. But do we mean stolen? There's a definition. Hold on. There's a definition. I want you to nail down this real quick. Do you mean stolen as in thousands of ballots were like submitted via mail-in in order to stuff? Hold on. But I need you to clarify a definition while you're telling me these things. So do you mean stolen insofar as like ballots were stuffed with dead people's names on it to the tunes of tens of thousands of votes, or do you mean that the institutions, like when you're talking about media, FBI, DOJ, whatever, they put their fingers on the scale because they had a preferred candidate? Which one do you mean?
Insofar as what's relevant to the topic at hand, okay, regardless of my personal stance or the things that I've investigated or the things that I've uncovered or tried to display, Trump believes that he was wrongfully fucking denied ability to appeal, ability to propose alternate electors. All of these things are coming under the scope of a corrupt DOJ that obviously has a completely skewed and double standard that leans one particular way but not the other way. That's really what's at hand right before us right now. Okay, is the fact that it's painfully fucking obvious that the Democrats have a double standard. And one of the things I'd like to bring up to you is the Her report, which absolutely demonstrated that Joe Biden completely broke the fucking law when it came to the handling of classified documents, and was not the president at the time that he took these documents out of the hands of NARA and the National Archives, and Trump was. And yet, one of the things that was also revealed from the Her report was the fact that the president has the authority, and it is commonplace for a president to treat classified documents as personal property, whereas the vice president or a senator does not. And yet, again, we have this corrupt DOJ leveraging this double standard. Trump is simply trying to point that out and say that, hey, I'm getting fucked over here. So that's what I believe. Okay, when it comes to what's relevant about what Trump thinks and what Trump believes is it's a double standard, and he's getting fucked.
Really quick, Jeb, I'll let you respond to this just like point by point really quick.
Yes.
But I do think that we're going to actually get way deep into this in the next question. So let's not dive too deep into this.
Connor didn't want to spend all night being distracted by this fucking issue.
Once you got pushed on specifics, you wanted to walk it back, but it's okay. I got the specifics.
I'm not walking anything back. What are you talking about? What am I walking back, Jeb? Let's clarify that real quick.
The Her report explicitly says that both the president and the vice president have the ability to take home these documents. It actually explicitly outlines the vice president is treated almost identically to the president in terms of who can take these things home and what they can take home. Obama made sure of that because he wanted to share the load and have multiple people that could handle these documents and not just him. We can argue that, that sucks that Obama did it, but unless you're going to argue he had fucking future sight and he was pre-targeting Trump because he knew Trump was going to do all the dumb bullshit that he did, that makes no sense. It also doesn't at all demonstrate that he clearly broke the law, because there is a requirement in the law that the Her report goes over extensively, which it's okay. EOD didn't read it, but it's fine. Which is that it requires intent, and Her repeatedly demonstrated all of the different ways that Biden didn't meet the intent standard. And they're going to say, yeah, they said it's because he was an old man and he couldn't have known what he was doing wrong. No, that's not it. That was one of about 13 different reasons why he didn't demonstrate the intent. Others were some of the documents were stuffed in notebooks, and he had a staffer.
He forgot. He forgot.
Yeah, sorry,
is what it was.
Sorry, Od.
Okay. Let's hear. Okay.
I'd like to respond to Jeb when he get a chance, and then back to Connor. I'll try to bring it back to what Connor said.
Okay? It clearly demonstrated that no, Joe Biden didn't break the law because the law requires that you intend to break the law, and it clearly demonstrated that he didn't intend to break the law. It also demonstrated that the VP is treated almost identically to the president in terms of what he can take home documents-wise, and that the documents that Joe Biden had personal possession of when he was a senator, they were ones that he was allowed to have personal possession of because they were his own personal briefings and notes and travel itineraries for the trips he was coming back from.
All right. First off, that part's not true. He was not allowed to have those as a senator. You may be right on the context of a vice president being treated similar to a president. However, senators do not get to take classified material home. He took that material out of a SCIF. He also broke the law and had intent in serious ways that are blatantly applicable. It proves that there was a double standard by her in not charging this. For example, here's ways we know. He admitted on tape that he had the classified Afghanistan documents. He found them in the basement. That is an admission that he found classified documents in the basement. The reason that he was allowed to get away with that was twofold. They said, well, even though that would be a crime and it would prove the intent, we can't prove that the Afghanistan documents that we actually found are the ones that he's talking about on tape. And second, he's a doddering old man that's confused, and so a jury would be sympathetic. But they say absolutely in the report that they could prove, or that they have evidence of his intent. He also did what we were told by Democrats and probably fake Republicans like Jebtan, was the smoking gun against Trump, which was that he told a writer, he told a news reporter on tape that he had classified documents. We know that Biden did that 3 times. Now, when Trump did it, it was considered a smoking gun, proof that he knew he was breaking the law. He had classified material he shouldn't. Biden did it 3 times and then went further than Trump by not only then reading that classified material, something Trump never did, on tape to his writer, but at one point literally showing it, which is actually, believe it or not, a different standard to read classified material as opposed to physically hand over the classified material, which is what happened. Now, the ghostwriter then proceeded, once it was figured out that there was going to be this special counsel, decided to delete the audio recordings, which the only plausible explanation would be that they were trying to obstruct justice. Another thing that they went after Trump for, but they decided to allow this person to get away with it at all. So you can see, just when you're listening, I would be happy to debate Jebtan 4 hours on this specific topic. We'll see how deep we get into it. But know that that flavors when he's talking about the type of Republican he wants. He wants a Republican like the Mitch McConnell types who will do anything to get Trump out of power. That's the whole point. He's happy with it. Right.
Neither of them.
Right. So Nikki Haley would be one. He wants neocon Republicans that would be happy to get back to the George Bush era, and they are upset that there are populists coming through, so they are completely fine with the weaponization and the double standard. Now, to go to Connor's point real quick. Connor, I will answer specifically what you're saying. You are absolutely correct to point out 2 distinctions, because I've argued that the election was stolen from Trump from day one, not because I could prove Dominion voting machines, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't have any of that proof. I have suspicion, but I don't have proof. But I consider it stolen because what we see was the sort of collusion between intel agencies and other government agencies going after Trump for 4 years, working with tech companies, censoring algorithms, censoring free speech, etc. So you're right to differentiate that. I will say definitively that Trump absolutely believes that the election was stolen because there were fraudulent ballots, voting machines that were changed, things like that. He probably also believes it was stolen in the aforementioned way, but my opinion is, regardless if it's actually true or not that the election was stolen from voting machines, Trump believes that it was. That's my interpretation.
So let me ask you one question, though, Rob. So you're thinking that because of the way that COVID happened and the rules were changing is the reason why, is what you're saying?
No, that's part of it. The changing, so for example, in Pennsylvania, the Superior Court in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, actually at one point overturned the mail-in ballots and said it was against the Pennsylvania Constitution. Wisconsin's done similar things. There have been groups that have outlawed sucker bucks and said that they probably didn't go with the state constitutions. That's part of it, right? And the massive ballot harvesting, the massive way we change voting with mail-in voting. But I'm talking about something far more nefarious, which is that we've had the weaponization of the Intel Committee since 2015-16 against Trump. That's been a never-ending saga. They've illegally spied on him. They've illegally leaked to the press. They pressured social media companies where we get the majority of our public discourse to censor people that were like Trump and people that were favorable to Trump. Professor Robert Epstein, for example, did a study on this and said that Google's manipulation of the algorithm alone would have the potential in future elections to sway 16 million votes. So when we're talking about an election that was decided in 3 or 4 swing states by basically 40,000 votes, if we have almost every institution putting their thumb on the scale, including former intel agencies denying truthful stories about the corruption of the other party, then yes, I think it's legitimate to say that that was stolen, and that's what I'm referencing.
Got it. You address something to Connor as well, Connor?
No, I'm happy Rob said what he said. I agree. I would be open to an argument saying that Trump believes the latter, basically. But it's no big deal one way or the other, because for me that's borderline disqualifying right there. But oh my fucking god. So Rob and I agree enough that it's not worth contention.
Got it. Okay, so let's go back to the institutions. So I heard a couple of you guys bring up institutions, and actually the institutions are actually an issue, and either we should need a drastic change, or basically sounds like completely get rid of them or some sort. So I guess we'll start with you, Connor, because you had a contention with the institutions. You wanted to fight Rob about it.
Yeah, so that's actually where I would push EOD a little bit on. Are we talking about Republicans and Democrats for the double standard, or are we talking about institutionalists versus non-institutionalists, which I think I heard Rob say, which is like populists versus neocons or something like that. So I could agree completely on whether or not there's like a pro-institutional bias in the government. And I think that if you look at the patterns of all the things that we're talking about, that's consistent and it's visible. It's borderline undeniable. I think the thing that we get into is how much of this borders into legal or illegal versus ethical and unethical, and then also, what is it good? So for instance, I wouldn't want to start from scratch with the FBI. I'm sure the FBI does good work related to drug trafficking and kidnapping and all that kind of bullshit. Now, if you want to talk about Crossfire Hurricane, I think there's some fucked up shit there. So there's some people who want to throw out the institution's root and stem, whereas I don't think that is even close to necessary.
EOD, do you want to take it? Or
yeah, sure. So what do we take is ultimately one of the reasons why I like Vivek Ramaswamy so much is one of the campaign promises that he ran on was firing more than 2/3 of the unelected bureaucrats that have been appointed to these positions and seem to just linger and never go away. It doesn't matter how long the administration lasts. Doesn't matter if it's 1 term or 2 terms. Those people are still there after it ends and for years and sometimes decades going into the future. And they get embedded into this obviously corrupt fucking system where apparently, I think Bill Hicks said it best. When the president's elected, the CIA brings him into a dark room and shows him, a film of the Kennedy assassination from the perspective of the grassy knoll that nobody's ever fucking seen before, and says, essentially, any questions, right? Like that's kind of where we're at. Like the president does not seem to have the authority that's actually guaranteed to him by the Constitution anymore, because of how corrupt and how widespread the corruption is throughout these bureaucracies that have overextended and overblown the power of the executive branch in America. So to some extent, you're right. There's got to be something salvageable. One of the things Ranger and I tend to disagree about is the saving the CIA. We need some sort of counterintelligence organization. I mean, it's true. We definitely have to do something to counter espionage and shit like that. They're basic fundamental needs that these agencies were originally intended to fulfill that need to be fulfilled, no doubt. However, a gross restructuring, I think, is necessary at this point. We can probably cut, 75, 85% of the fat. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, a lot of the FBI are people that aren't the agents we think of when we're watching, and I guess NCIS doesn't have the FBI. It's in the name, you dumbass, Rob. But you see what I mean? Like those sort of shows that you
federal
see,
law enforcement.
Right. Like there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes on to it. I think Vivek on this direct point is correct. Where he has a plan where he would say we'd work with institutions like the U.S. Marshals, state police, etc., and a lot of the on-the-ground agents that are working on task force. We would redirect funds to those sorts of groups. There'd be a gradual phasing out of the FBI. I agree with that because I think the FBI in its current form is unsalvageable, and perhaps we could create another institution with similar powers, but more checks and balances that would take across the mantle of the FBI in the coming years. Because right now, the a priori issue of the FBI is to decide what is best for this country and usurp the power of the executive leader, which is the president of the United States. And Chuck Schumer called this out in 2016 once Trump was elected and was waiting to be sworn in, where he said the mere fact that Trump was criticizing the FBI was a huge mistake because they'd find 6 ways a Sunday at getting back at him. And I could talk for hours and hours and hours showing how the FBI has done just that. The easiest would be, as Connor knows, Crossfire Hurricane, where literally for the first time in history that I'm aware of, the FBI illegally used FISA warrants to spy on a sitting president and his campaign. They did that. There is no excuse for it. They did so under the auspices that he was supposedly colluding with Russians. The way they sought to prove that was to go to his opponent's campaign, who was colluding with a Russian spy named Igor Dushenko, or at least an alleged Russian spy, and then they took that information unverified and used it to spy on a president. You cannot have that agency or the people at the top of that agency continue to have the faith. You want to talk about unifying people? How could people unify around that message? That's blatant. We can see what they've done to just average people since then. We see the FBI kicking in the doors of peaceful pro-life protesters that just want abortion to end. And they're looking at 15 years as their families broken into with dozens of agents with armed weapons that are forcing them to the ground in front of them. We can see how they went after school board parents. We can see how they tipped off CNN before they went after Roger Stone. And we can see the exact opposite interaction anytime there's someone that's a pro-institutional Democrat or even Republican and they're accused of crime. They're always treated with the softest hand possible. So to me, any one politician, whether it be Trump, Biden, Obama, Hillary, whatever, all of them will come and go. But when you have an institution like this that has so much power that politicians admit, like Chuck Schumer, you can't criticize them. They are more powerful than even the president of the United States. And you see the blatant evidence of the double standard they're employing. Until we get rid of that sort of institution, there will be no unification, and we can't get back to policies as normal where I sit here and tell Jeb Tan how stupid it is to send money to the Ukraine.
And actually, yeah, I saw, Jeb, you were shaking your head. Yeah, you were shaking your head, so you're more than welcome to go.
From the beginning. So, while I agree, I also don't love the three-letter agencies. EOD's fucking emphasis on how we need to bring back the power to the executive branch is fucking ridiculous for a conservative to say. That's what all conservatives always wanted, right? The president to have more executive power. That's what we love. It's fucking ridiculous. And also,
it's not that ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. One of the things that I think is...
At least the president elected, Jeb. Okay.
Listen, you said the most dumb shit of anybody here so far, and I didn't interrupt you. So let me get myself out here. So I think we can agree on three-letter agencies needing some reform, 100%. I agree with Connor. You can't just tear them down and then just say, well, we need a ground-up restructuring. You need to have somebody with a plan for that, and not a plan to do it, a plan on how to do it. And Vivek didn't have plans for jack shit because he was dog shit, terrible candidate. Not even going to cover him because he was useless. He ended up with topping out at 4% by the end. The issue is Donald Trump being the guy that is more likely to do it when that dude fired anybody who disagreed with him and attacked anybody he couldn't weaponize. He tried to weaponize an executive power Mike Pence didn't even have, to the point that he didn't stop his own people from saying that they should hang him because he didn't use a power that he didn't have. He talked shit on Bill Barr and pushed him out because Bill Barr said he couldn't find any evidence of election fraud over and over, which, by the way, Donald Trump believes he got the election stolen from him. With the number of very reputable people that he handpicked to lead every single investigation, telling him that there was no election fraud, if he does genuinely believe that the election was stolen from him in the way that Rob respectfully was willing to bite the bullet on, it is more disqualifying of him being president than if he lied about thinking the election was stolen.
So just to be clear, if we would ever find evidence that any one of those states had significant fraud that teetered on that state changing, you would be willing to bite the bullet and say you're a complete jackass and that you're ashamed of the fact that you intentionally helped cover up this.
It's been a few years, Rob. I would like it to get exposed at this point.
Well, right. Yeah. For example, we see the woman who was elected in Arizona that's now going after the people that were the alternate electors, where time after time in court, she refuses to go after these cases where they're providing quite solid evidence that there were issues with chain of custody, with the types of ballots that were sent out, with ballots that didn't have proper signatures, ballots that weren't submitted on proper times, and they're refusing to look at those issues in court. In Georgia, for example, we can see that they're still delaying a court order where a court has ordered that they go back and look at some of these ballots. Now, I don't know how those will turn out, but what I'm saying saying is the people that are like, yep, definitive, no cheating, absolutely, we know it, and it's disqualifying forever.
But you're not in the room with those people though. So that's that.
But no.
That's where for me,
asked
like,
me a question, Rob, about what bullet I'd bite. I will bite if there is definitive proof that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. Yes.
No. That's not the question.
I don't care what your question is, because if that wasn't your question, then
I'm going to answer your question, but I don't care what your question is, Rob.
What if they proved that Georgia was stolen, but that still wouldn't be enough to turn the election?
That would still be the election being stolen from Donald Trump.
Okay, well that's why I said it's not, because they could prove that, for example, there were tens of thousands of fraudulent ballots, but it wouldn't be enough to switch the national.
Rob,
if they could prove that there were tens of thousands,
if they can prove that there was widespread election fraud that stole the election from Donald Trump, I will say you shouldn't trust the people who said there wasn't widespread election fraud.
Fair enough.
Stole the election from Donald Trump.
Well, Rob, and here's the thing: we're a full election cycle past this. So for instance, like I was promised a fucking Kraken 4 years ago.
Bullshit.
Okay, no, but I'm saying, like, if I'm promised a Kraken, 4 years ago, and then I don't have a fucking Kraken 4 years later. And by the way, this is like there's more people than just what's her name, Sidney Powell or something. There's more people than just her. So there's plenty of other people who could have produced like substantive documentation to the public. They don't even have to go to court. They could just publish the documentation. It's like, here's a concise summary of how we think this election was stolen, not through the institutions putting their finger on the scale so public opinion swayed away from Trump, but legitimately just, no, it was fucking stolen.
They can't do that for two reasons. One, you could see that if you say that and you don't have access to the evidence, you could be sued. And second, oftentimes what a lot of these ongoing court cases are trying to get access to that evidence. So I'm going to butcher this, so please don't take me at face value of this, but I watched testimony the other day. I believe it was in Georgia, and the people in Georgia and Fulton County were admitting they never actually used the government mandated process to certify the ballots that they got. They were forced to admit under oath in this court hearing, actually, we have these programs for signature mass verification, but we never use them. So the question then becomes, and I can tell you, like, for example, in my state of Pennsylvania, one of the big issues were because of the massive change in the way we voted, everybody knew that there were going to be significant challenges no matter who won the state of Pennsylvania. So predictable challenges that were going to arise were, there was a law that was passed in Pennsylvania that said that your signature on your mail-in ballot didn't have to match your voter registration. That was clearly going to be challenged. So the precincts were instructed to keep those ballots separate. There were also ballots they were instructed to keep separate that were ballots that were like sent post the date of the election, but were sent previous to the date of when the election occurred, but were received after. Anyways, there were just a bunch of piles of ballots. Guess what happened? They all got mixed together. And so there have been ongoing court hearings be like, look, we have to figure out what happens. And they're just like, well, there's nothing to see here. You can't look at it. And we can see in places like Fulton County and places like Arizona, what happens is the government agents drag their feet. For example, in Arizona, one of the things that occurred, but
I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm just trying to say, like, this is where it's just not enough, right?
Well, that's just
so for instance, hold on. So you're telling me that there was a voter registration ID system that wasn't used.
Correct.
That to me, okay, now the next step, right? The next step would be, okay, they didn't use the system that was implemented. That's a breach of some policy that I'm unaware of because I don't work at the fucking state election.
Sure.
Now, how many ballots do they suspect of being fraudulent as a result of this?
They won't.
Right?
That's absolutely right. And the problem is they're fighting tooth and nail to allow access to an actual audit of those ballots. Now, let me throw both you and Jeb a bone here. None of this proves the election was stolen. None of it. It could be that we look and actually Trump got less votes. That's entirely possible. What we're saying, though, is there are significant questions, and the people that could resolve these questions are dragging their feet and refusing to be transparent about it. So it's entirely plausible that someone like Donald Trump, although you are right, there were people around him, such as Bill Barr, saying nothing to see here. Well, we see that Barr was disingenuous. He didn't look into this as he was telling Trump he did. He didn't look into any of it. He just said, no, the election's over.
Can I bring up probably the most...
Matter. Why are we investigating? Yeah.
Well, can I bring up probably the most prominent example that everybody was talking about?
Sure.
Right. So the ballots being brought out from underneath the table when the pipes allegedly burst when they didn't burst.
Okay, so
et cetera,
just for the record, you're the one bringing this up. Nobody brought that up.
Okay, well we might as well. We're already.
He's saying this is the most. Yeah.
This is the most prominent one. So the people who investigated it.
I disagree, right? Honestly, but.
Hold on, I'll let you go next.
Well, I haven't even said anything yet. So the thing that a lot of people said was that, these ballots were pulled out, they were fraudulent. Basically, it was bullshit, blah, blah, blah. They should have never been counted. They were likely, blah, blah, all that kind of shit. The people who investigated whether or not those were like fraudulent ballots or whether or not there was a problem was the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. That is a state level entity. It's like Georgia. I don't know if you've ever fucking been there. It's not exactly like blue dog fucking Democrat in the governance. So these would be the number one people who would have every cultural motivation to fucking expose like deep voter fraud that fucked over Donald Trump. And the GBI said, nah, like they explained it. It made sense. We didn't find any fraud. Sorry about it. But so like for me, it's like, how many times do I have to jump from target to target to target before I just say, it seems like the people who are lying are lying. And as a result, they cannot be trusted.
And just a very quick thing before we go over to EOD is just what Robert said, which was none of this proves it, but they're fighting our ability to even get to the next line of evidence, really. Like my issue is, and I think what gives a lot of people pause with that argument, is it seems like every time we do get a step forward and the evidence does go against Donald Trump, all of a sudden there's a new reason why that evidence shouldn't be trusted or why the organization that collected it shouldn't be trusted. It doesn't seem like if we continue wasting years and years continuing to litigate this and more evidence comes out against Trump, it doesn't actually seem like that side's ever going to relent. It's just going to, they're just going to say that's just how deep the corruption goes. Look at them exposing.
Really quick, Rob, let EOD go first. I apologize, brother.
Okay, man. Like, look, the most prominent issue, Connor, is not this grossly obscene fucking optical scene that we got out of Fulton County, Georgia, which is the county that encompasses Atlanta, which is absolutely blue dog fucking territory.
GBI state.
It's not that. That was a fucking a distraction as far as I'm concerned. What the real issue comes in is the several states. Some of them Rob listed: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan for that matter, changing the way that elections work in order to supposedly facilitate the COVID pandemic or whatever, okay? And the problem isn't that they did that. The problem is how, it was executive fiat. It wasn't legislated. It wasn't done through any sort of reasonable due process or by representatives of the people. It was brought down from on high by governors who wanted to do something to deal with this public health emergency that we were all dealing with. And that's where a lot of things become questionable. We have mountains and mountains of ballots with unverified signatures, unverifiable signatures, improper paperwork, improper handling. We lost, what is it? Chains of custody on a lot of these ballots. Which, and again, the real fucking issue now is that we can't investigate this stuff because they won't fucking hear it at trial. They say, oh no, we don't have any standing. Even if what you claim is true, then it wouldn't have overturned the presidential election. So we're not even going to hear it right now. Like this kind of fucking jurisdictional, procedural horseshit that just stops the case from moving forward before it even fucking begins. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
But I want to bring up an example though, because like you're going down a rabbit hole that I just can't follow you on. So for instance, let's talk about like Georgia specifically. We all should have heard the Trump like Georgia. I forget if it's like the state attorney or attorney general or whatever.
Example, but you keep wanting to go back.
Well, I'm not trying to go back there to be obtuse. I'm trying to go back there to use it as an example of why I'm frustrated with the evidentiary standard that you're using, okay? So within that phone call, like the Trump is adamant that he's like, he cites the same things that you cited, right? He says we got unverified signatures, we got out-of-state voters, we got dead voters, we got this, that, the other, and then they estimate that the total tally for irregular votes is at like 58,000 or some shit like that. And basically what the state attorney or attorney general or whoever the fuck it is on the phone goes through, we eliminated this pool of suspicious voting activity through X. We eliminated this pool of suspicious voting activity through Y. We looked at this group, and it's not not only is it not substantiated, but it actually went against you. And as a result, we don't think that your concerns are valid. Therefore, we've concluded our investigation. Therefore, we're done. And they said, guess what? Tough titties, deal with it. And basically, Trump is insisting.
I'm going to toss it off to Rob here in just a second, because we keep fucking dogpiling on this bullshit about Trump this and Trump that, and I fucking knew this is what this debate was going to fucking turn into.
Well,
but
I can steer this.
If you want.
The problem is that the focus of this and the burden of proof is exactly being inverted, and I can explain why. So let's start first with what Jeff Tan said, if I can remember. He said, "Oh, geez, we skipped that part."
With the people making claims, they have to have evidence.
He said getting more evidence, every time we get more evidence, it shows there wasn't corruption, right? It's in a nutshell. What
I'm saying is every time we get more evidence that there wasn't corruption, the Trump camp finds a new reason.
Okay, right. So the argument is then they'll just keep moving the goalposts and they'll never concede that they lost the election. The problem is, 100%. Although I might agree, I think strategically it's a really bad idea at this point to relitigate the 2020 election if you're the candidate going for 2024. I agree. And it's a mistake Trump's made the whole time. Now, if you sincerely feel you lost, he should couch it in terms of, look, whatever you think of the 2020 election, here's why election security is important, because inevitably these things could happen. That's the better way to do it, and I think that's what DeSantis did. I think that's a smart way to go about it. So I disagree with how Trump's going about. However, the reason that we need to relitigate the 2020 election is two reasons. One, because literally there are court cases to stop Trump from winning from the DOJ and Biden that's relitigating. Right? And second, because of in the context of this debate, Connor said the disqualifying issue with Trump is basically that he still thinks he lost 2020 and acted a fool because of that. And so the point is that if we could concede that there is evidence out there still to be seen, the problem is every time we do get access to smaller amounts of new evidence, it doesn't seem to prove what Trump's alleging. It does speak to his mindset, though, that he really believes that this evidence will eventually prove him this way.
Not necessarily, no. I think one of the things that Trump has benefited from is the sort of good faith of his own audience, thinking that as long as he is continuing to push the 2020 election issue, the conspiracy, because even if you believe he's right, it would still be a conspiracy. As long as he keeps pushing the 2020 conspiracy, he's trustworthy in believing that in the 2020 conspiracy. I'm sure it'll get dropped if he were to win the election because it doesn't matter anymore. The issue is when we talk about if there is evidence out there that the election was stolen, my problem is we're already taking for granted that there is. You have guys like EOD who haven't looked at what you've looked at, Rob, who are saying, we have all of these ballots that have unverifiable signatures. We have all of these things that broke the...
I really wish you would stop personally attacking.
It is alleged that we have
that'd be really great.
But we have not. It has not been proven that we have those things.
But again,
if you just listen to Trump, we have all of these things, and that is a lie. And if you are lying to me, that leads me to believe that he doesn't believe what he's saying is true. He feels the need to lie about it to support it.
I completely disagree. I think Trump is the type of person that flies off the handle a little and says, a little on his chest more than he should. That's one of the things that people did like about him, and sometimes that comes into handy. But it doesn't come into handy when you're talking about things that you're going to be prosecuted for, which regardless if you think it's...
So, hold on, but why would I trust him to run the country then?
Well, because it's a binary choice between him and Joe Biden, and he's better than Joe Biden.
But Joe Biden is a corpse.